Hello, friends and strangers. My name is DJ Chuang. I'm Chinese American Christian here in Orange County, California. And I was very encouraged to find some English speaking pastors in Chinese churches who are podcasting and using the tools and the technology of the 21st century to do ministry online. And as you know, living in this season, we are physically isolated and distanced, and there are so many people that need to be reached outside of the physical church building. And so these English pastors are inspiring me to realize that church life and ministry has so much more potential and fruitfulness outside of the church walls. So I commend them for their efforts, and I want to share them with you. So what I'll be showing you is the three podcasts that I know of from English pastors in ethnic Chinese churches. Don't call them immigrant churches. They prefer to be called ethnic churches or ethnic Chinese churches is what I've heard from some leading Chinese church pastors. Some are also starting to call them Chinese heritage churches as they continue proclaiming the gospel from their Chinese heritage and begin reaching out to non-Chinese as well in their physical neighborhood and community. So one of the first ones I wanted to share with you is CAMP, which stands for Canadian Asian Missional Podcast by three Canadian American pastors. I'm going to change, let's see. Yeah, I need to change the screen because that's sharing the wrong screen here. So let me get to this one with the sound on so you can hear from their episode. Canadian Asian Missional Podcast. They've been podcasting since February of 2018. Every twice a month, three hosts, Shu Ling Lee, Bernard Tam, and John Nip discuss all things related to Canadian Asians and joining God's mission in the world. They have over 10,000 listens so far. And here's a picture of what they look like. Pretty good photos there on Instagram. And let me share with you how they introduce themselves here on episode 1.
Hi, how's it going? This is the Canadian Asian Missional Podcast. And this is our very first episode. Today we're going to talk about why it's important and timely for us to engage in this conversation and how we got to a place of starting this podcast. Here we go. So, just to jump right into it, how do we get this going and who's going to be involved? Let me introduce our hosts today. We have Shu Ling Lee. Shu Ling, would you want to give our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, just call me Shu, first of all. I can't even, my own name, Shu Ling. Okay, but yeah, I'm a pastor in Richmond Hill. Yeah, I have a passion for the church, passion for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and want to see what that means in our context today and how we can reach others and disciple more people.
Awesome. Now, personally for you, why is this a conversation that is important?
I think it's important because hearing a lot of people from other, in particular, I guess, Chinese or Asian churches, there's a lot of, I guess, loneliness in ministry and frustrations, and just to, have a place to dialogue about some issues that we may never have talked about.
Awesome. So also we got our host, Bernard Tam. Bernard, say hi.
Hi, I'm Bernard. How's it going?
How's it going? Yes, we're getting started. So you want to give our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, well, I'm Bernard from Toronto. I'm a church planter in the city. I love to see innovative and creative ways to engage the gospel into the community and neighborhoods. I love coffee. Anybody that knows me, I'm also a coffee evangelist, as I am a Jesus evangelist. So, yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Fantastic. My name is John. I am also a pastor here in Toronto. I work with families and youth in Scarborough, and I'm a big sci-fi fan as well. And so we're coming together as three brothers, as three pastors, to continue to work through these things and to hopefully help you guys as you guys are going through some of the same things in your churches and in your life. Fantastic. So, as mentioned before, this is the Canadian Asian Missional Podcast, or CAMP for short. We'll talk about camp. It's not camping. There's no literal tents or fishing or fire pits, but you know what? Hopefully,
But we're gonna talk about tent making and stuff like that too, right?
there you go. I think
And
that's
starting.
All right, and there you go. That was the Canadian Asian Missional Podcast, and encourage that our friends north of the border have started this conversation ahead of the curve. Awesome. Second one I just found 2 weeks ago, last week, actually this week, the Bamboo Pastors Podcast. A couple guys, Jalen Chan and John Mann. Those are iconic, what do you call those? Iconic icons of their headshots and facial hair and glasses. And let me have them introduce themselves.
Welcome to the Bamboo Pastors Podcast, a podcast that explores the joys and challenges of being an English-speaking pastor in a Chinese church. I'm Jalen Chan, and I'm here with my co-host, John Mon.
Hey, everyone.
Together, we host the Bamboo Pastors Podcast. We're glad that you're here with us. Come on in and have a seat at the table. All right, John, this is it. And this is our first episode. I'm so excited to see you. I know this is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and we're finally doing it. So here we are. For our listeners, my name is Jalen Chan, and I'm co-hosting this podcast with my dear friend, John Mon. John, can you share with us a little bit about yourself? This is going to be an episode where we just kind of talk about who we are and why we're doing this and why it's important for us. So I'll let you just kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Jalen. I mean, I can't believe that after all these years, we're finally recording something, but I'm really excited to do it because I think that this is something that we need to process what we've been learning as pastors, but also to give voice to other people. And we'll talk about that more in just a bit. For our listeners, I am the worship pastor at San Jose Christian Alliance Church. I actually just started at this church a few months ago. I moved during a pandemic, which was quite an ordeal. But before coming out to this church, I served for 12 years in the youth ministry, both as an intern and also as the youth pastor at Wheaton Chinese Alliance Church. So most of my ministry experience is in youth ministry in the Chinese church. Now have made a slight switch as God has led me to something new, to serving mostly with adults, but still with youth, primarily centered around worship ministry. And that's something that I really enjoy, and am finding myself enjoying serving at this new church. What about you, Jalen? Where are you serving, and what's your experience in ministry?
Yeah, so I am currently serving as the English pastor at Chinese Christian Fellowship Church in Wilmette, Illinois. It's a northern suburb of Chicago. And both of us actually grew up at the same Chinese church. That's how we know each other. We've known each other for at least 30 years. We have a lot of shared experience and shared history together. We both grew up at Chinese Christian Union Church in the Chinatown of Chicago. But yeah, I've been serving at Chinese Christian Fellowship Church for 6 years now, and it's been a joy. I'm loving it. Prior to that, I served for about 8 years as a pastor at South Loop Community Church in the city of Chicago. It was a multi-ethnic church. And then, of course, as we said, we grew up together at Chinese church. And so have always had a heart for Chinese churches and being in Chinese ministry, grew up in it, serving in it now, spent some time in a multicultural church and learned a lot there, but truly loving the Chinese church with all of its joys and challenges. And that's part of why I think we want to do this podcast, right? Because this is the world that we live in, exist in, that we grew up in. Chinese church for us is more than just a Sunday worship service event, right? So much of this is part of who we are. So much of the Chinese church has informed our faith, of course, but also a lot of our identity, our ethnic identity. I know for me, growing up in a Chinese church was so valuable to understand first who I am in Christ, but secondly, who I am as a Chinese American. And that's why I think Chinese churches are so important, even now, and even having English ministries in a Chinese church. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, is to be a resource for other Chinese churches with English ministries and English pastors and people who are serving in English ministries at Chinese churches. But we're also wanting to be learners. We're going to have people on who can give us insight because they've walked ahead of us, because they've had so many more years of ministry than we have, and they can share with us their insights and stuff. But that's part of the reason why it's important for me to be doing this podcast. What are some reasons why it's important for you to be doing this podcast?
Well, listen to the rest of that episode and understand why it's so important for us as Asian American Christians, Asian American pastors, especially Chinese pastors, to be speaking more in the open about our faith of journey, and especially as church and ministry leaders. I don't know why it's taken us till 2018 or 2020 to start those conversations. I've been yearning for them since early 2000, and it's been mostly a monologue, and there's occasional discussions offline, in real time, real person, face to face. But that is not the only way we communicate. We use telephone, we use video calls, we use Zoom. This is a new world. We need to be learning to communicate publicly and in the open, demonstrating how we can be a witness in public, and not only in the safe confines of our bubble or echo chamber. So really encouraged to see both the Canadians and these two guys with roots in Chicago, which is fascinating because the majority of Chinese Americans are in California and New York, demographically speaking, and yet those were not the places where these conversations first started. But there is one church here in Southern California called First Chinese Baptist Church of Walnut that does have some very good online ministry that's going on. They've got almost 10 different playlists and channels on their church YouTube channel, a weekly video update, women's ministry, certainly their Chinese ministry, certainly their sermons for the adults, Mandarin, English, children, and they have Walnut Notes here, which is for lay people talking about their faith with an eye towards worship, family ministry, college, youth, young adults, and Walnut Commentary, kind of a Q&A and topical, as well as devotional videos and podcasts. I really appreciate their social media officer, Aaron Lee, who produces these. And you have lay people in your churches, whether they're Chinese or not Chinese. There's people that know how to use social media. That's why there are so many people using social media, because there are people that know how to use social media. Give them that opportunity to be using the tools for furthering ministry. So here's a little snippet from one of the commentaries that they made about living out your faith. This is regarding the topic of disappointment.
Hi, everybody. We are recording live on Zoom for Walnut. It's our first time recording. I'm going live with Pastor Hanley. We have some friends here in the Zoom chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hanley, before we start, we need to clear the air, man. You and I had a little argument before this entire COVID thing happened. Can you? I'm just gonna let you talk, man. I'm gonna let you do it. I'm gonna let you talk.
Okay, sure. I mean, we've already cleared the air, obviously.
Yeah, we gotta do it for everybody else.
Yeah, but the week before everything shut down. So this is a Wednesday leading up to the last Sunday that we gathered at church. That Wednesday, I called. I don't know. I think I must have texted you. Seemed pretty urgent, and I was then communicating with Aaron, and I was like, "Hey, there's a chance we need to shut down." And at this point, like churches aren't shutting down yet. I say, "Hey, there's a chance we need to go online." As a social media guy, like I just need to know what's possible. Can we live stream? Can we go online? Can we move things onto virtual space? And my mistake, so I'll come out with that. My mistake was that as you were giving me some of your feedback and saying, well, no, I don't know if we really need to do that. It seems like you're overreacting, Hanley. Do we really need to go to drastic measures and bring everything online? You also said something along, and this is pretty funny. It's not that I disagree with it, but I was like, hey, what about bringing our sermons online? And you're like, well, you know what? The men who are members of a church should lead devotions for all of their families. Rather than having a Sunday online sermon. I think you might have said something like that.
I did, yeah.
And I was, I'm thinking from a pastoral viewpoint, like, no, we need to provide the word of God for the average person. I agree with you theologically, but then I said something to you. I said, look, I'm simply asking you a question because I need to lead a meeting on Sunday and I need to talk to the core team about what our capabilities are. And then later I felt bad. Because then, we ended. It wasn't like the nicest call, but you're like, okay, fine. I'll do it. I'll let you know what we can do. Here's what we can do. And I think I tried to call you back. Eventually, we got on the phone. And I said, hey, man, I need to ask for your forgiveness because we're friends. I mean, we're actually friends, And I was talking to you like just as a leader. Like, hey, man, I need some answers. Like I need to know what we can do. And I think another brother who does tech stuff and gets us online. He probably also felt like, hey, Hanley, it seems like you're kind of urgent. You seem over urgent about this, like I'm overreacting. So, and then obviously you accepted, received my forgiveness, you offered, you received my apology and forgave me. And I think it's this kind of stuff just happens with us a lot. We argue about theology and stuff. And I think that's my end. What's funny is that Sunday came around, we had our meeting, and then the very next Wednesday, church shut down, and we went online. So I'm not saying like look, man, I told you so, or anything like that, but it was I think I was coming from a.
Isn't that great? So that I didn't preview that video, so they had a little banter before, and poignant moment, vulnerability of the pastor and his lay leader working out some misunderstanding or offense and experiencing forgiveness and restoration of relationships. So that was a beautiful thing. And while I have spent most of my Christian life outside of the Chinese church, going to non-Chinese churches, whether it's multi-ethnic or majority white, or multi-ethnic, mostly Korean. I did work 2 years in a traditional ethnic Chinese church with Mandarin, Cantonese, and English ministries. And I was the youth director, youth pastor there for 2 years, and understand some of the challenges and the uniqueness of that context. And I still identify with my people there, but as part of that broader community, I certainly yearn for the growth of that community becoming more healthy as well as more innovative, and using technology to further their ministry, even though it is risky, even though it is fraught with misunderstandings and concerns when you put yourself out there. But this is the opportunity of our time and our age, and it is time for our light to shine through the screens that are in people's pockets and in front of them and around them. And so be encouraged, go take a step of faith. And I'd love to hear more about podcasting, Chinese pastors who are English speaking or Chinese speaking. Thanks for watching this video. Add a comment if you would like to see more spotlights and showcasing of what God is doing amongst Asian Americans.